Officer Waldman, I'd like to ask you a few questions. How long have you been a partner with Officer Levy? About a year. And you work well together. Others in the department look to you for advice, for assistance. It was on that same basis that you stopped at the burglary that evening that was at Division in Rockwell. The interchange that you have with the uniformed officers there, they keep you informed as to what's going on the street, and you reciprocate, and you work well together as a team. Would it be fair to say that you and Officer Levy pretty much know what each other is thinking at the same time, that when things come up, you're right there to look out for the other? Yes, I would expect that. So the question that I wanted to ask of you, when you left the burglary, how much driving around did you do before you came to the place of the shooting of Mr. Ramirez? Yes, during the testimony, deposition, it was asked of you how long you've been driving, but you did not give a clear answer. You just merely went into the description of what happened that evening without giving an answer. So I'm asking again, trying to determine it again. So when you left the location at Division, and you're saying that there was no other place that you had driven other than straight to the corner of California north and a right on Evergreen and to where the place of the shooting was, that was there any other car out there that night? The only vehicle that you have in your testimony is one that came upon you from the rear very quickly. You're about 3/4 of the way between Rockwell and California. And you identified that car as Mr. Ramirez's. You were going 10 miles an hour, thereabouts. At that speed, the car, if you had pulled out onto Division, would have only have been in your rear view window maybe 20 seconds or so. What distinguishing characteristics did you see of the car? Did you turn your head and look behind you to try to determine what it was, or are you relying simply on what your partner, Officer Levy, noticed of it? When the car raced around you, how much of it could you see? Testimony, it stated that it was a Mercury, and that the car barreled on past through the intersection of California and continued on down Division. With this, where it passed you, you would have had maybe 300 feet or so to get to the corner of California. At the speed that you were going, that would have been 15 or 20 seconds more, for which you saw the car pulling away. Would it be fair to say that sitting directly ahead of you on the street, a street that is very level, no obstructions, that you would have seen brake lights or that on that car should it have braked to turn around? So when you turned onto California, did you see any other cars on California? This car here being the only one that you had seen. Your testimony is that not until you were onto Evergreen did this very car, Mr. Ramirez's, appear again. And again, honking and trying to get around and being rather an event. My question, though, is that from here to here, even at the very slow speed that you would have been traveling, it would have only taken maybe 30 seconds to drive that. That in the distance from here to here, it would have been maybe 15 seconds or so to get to the corner, which would have allowed this car to be well past a quarter of a mile, almost a half a mile down, probably further out Muniz Marin Drive. Yet you did not see it here. I'm curious as to how you could have driven all the way up California and not have noted, as you did here, the car racing up behind you, that you did not note any car racing up behind you there. Mr. Ramirez could not have circled all the way around in the time that it took you to get from here to there, even driving as slowly as you were. Would have had to made a very radical turn to come back, but yet you didn't see him. But when you did see him here, you are quite confident that it is the same individual. How is it that you are so certain? Your recall skills, your attention to detail, I understand. I get that. But here, when Mr. Ramirez pulled you over, your testimony is that Officer Levy pulled over so that he was sitting next to the curb. That it was your testimony that your partner should just simply pull over and let this car go by. Your testimony and Officer Levy is that Mr. Ramirez blocked you, pulled in, prevented you from being able to go any further. Is that correct? It's still your testimony. I'm very puzzled by the fact that in the sworn testimony before, you did not recall any conversation that Officer Levy and Mr. Ramirez had while driving. It was your testimony that you believe the window had remained up. With this kind of event having taken place, being on the alert, looking for unusual things, for burglars and that, I'm surprised that it didn't achieve more commentary from you. Certainly when you were driving up California from Division before you turned onto Evergreen, to comment on the curious behavior of this car that blew by you. That upon seeing this car behind you again, that it would not have been of great suspicion to you that perhaps this person had meant you ill. I am curious that when Mr. Ramirez came around the back of his car, and your partner admits that he did not see Mr. Ramirez with a knife until at this point, but yet he is still in his car with the window up. Why your partner would have decided to open his car to confront a knife-wielding attacker when you on this side of the car, would it not have been reasonable police procedure for you to have told your partner to stay put while you over the top of the car with the car shielding you, and you with a pistol would have a much better opportunity to deal with a knife-wielding individual on this side of the car. Yet your partner exited the car nonetheless. You say that you saw Mr. Ramirez strike your partner in the shoulder with a knife. That time that you were racing around the back of the car, somewhere through here is when you drew your revolver. That Mr. Ramirez had his arm raised, that your partner was struggling, that your partner's grip had broken, and that the knife was coming down again, and it was at that moment that you shot. Yet your partner's sworn testimony was that he had the grip of his life with both hands onto the one hand and arm of Mr. Ramirez. That arm, that blade, was suspended in the air. It was not coming down. I would be puzzled how even a strong man with one arm would be able to overpower another reasonably strong man with two. That isn't it police procedure that even in such situations that to preserve human life, the safety of all parties is paramount. That with a situation with the arm raised but secure by your partner, why you chose to fire instead of making a warning to abate the attack onto your partner. But I would ask, the fact that your partner was stabbed, how did you feel? Angry? Yes, I bet you were. And what would you want to do with someone who attacked your partner? As a detective, it would be to amass the evidence to make sure that that person was going to be put away for a very, very long time. Yet, part of the most crucial evidence, ABC, would have been the clothing that your partner was wearing when he went in to have that wound treated. A wound, I might add, had no bearing on his ability to defend himself, a wound that merely required the application of a dry bandage, a Band-Aid, in order to take care of it. No blood really came about of that small cut per the hospital report. But yet that clothing that would have been so helpful to be able to further evidence to convict Mr. Ramirez, it was gone. I don't understand. I also would ask if you could explain to me why, when your sergeant showed up and found the knife by the body of Mr. Ramirez, the blade was closed. And at the time that your sergeant and the uniformed patrolman showed up, that was close to 45 minutes after this shooting was to have taken place. Again, from when you left the burglary scene and got to the site of the shooting, could not have been more than 2-3 minutes travel time tops. The altercation with your partner, from the description given, was a very brief encounter. And yet it was 4:35 when you made the frantic walkie-talkie communication with the patrolman and your sergeant to come back urgently. What took place in that nearly half hour between the 4 o'clock, your sworn testimony at the time of the shooting, and the 4:35 of the frantic call for help? There was certainly no aid given to Mr. Ramirez at that time. And when your sergeant appeared, your partner was sitting behind the wheel of his car, dazed. 45 minutes after the shooting took place, he still remains dazed. Is it that traumatic an event that your partner had experienced with this wound, of which only a Band-Aid was required, that he required to sit behind his patrol car steering wheel, trying to gain composure, while Mr. Ramirez lay bleeding profusely at the rear of the car with a knife by his side, a knife without fingerprints? Again, can you explain with your experience how a knife that was struggled with, palm around it, how that knife could be found with no fingerprints nor the blood evidence from your partner either? And yet, the final question that I would ask, your sergeant said that the car of Mr. Ramirez was not parked in the manner shown here, but was parked in the middle of the street, parallel to your car, that neither car would have been inhibited in any way from leaving the position that they had been at rest. Were the cars moved after the shooting? Was the crime scene altered in any way to have it come from your testimony here to your sergeant's testimony of the car parked in the middle of the street and parallel alongside your car? Many questions, and I have no others at this time. Yours to cross-examine.